The stars seemed peaceful as the research vessel Meridian's Edge drifted through the cosmic void. Ambassador Kira stood at the observation deck, her blue-scaled hands pressed against the cool metal railing as she watched distant nebulae paint the darkness in shades of purple and gold. The Villani had always found beauty in the emptiness of space, but today something felt different. The ship's communication array crackled to life with an urgent tone that made Kira's gills flutter with anxiety. Captain Roland's voice echoed through the corridors, calling all senior staff to the bridge immediately. Kira had served as a diplomatic liaison for 12 cycles, but she had never heard such fear in the captain's voice. When she arrived at the bridge, the crew was gathered around the main display screen. The transmission they were receiving was unlike anything in the galactic database. It was a distress signal, but not from any single world or species. This was a broadcast from the Galactic Council itself, something that had never happened in recorded history. The image that materialized on the screen showed Ambassador Thalon of the Corvani Empire, his usually composed features twisted with desperation. His 4 eyes darted nervously as he spoke, and his crystalline skin had lost its natural shimmer. Behind him, the Grand Council chamber was in chaos, with representatives from dozens of species arguing and gesturing wildly. To all listening vessels, Thalon's voice trembled. We are broadcasting this emergency message across all known frequencies. The Harvester fleet has returned from the galactic void. 17 core worlds have fallen in the past solar cycle. The colonies of Zarian Prime, Bethel Station, and the entire Altair system have been consumed. Kira felt her blood turn cold. The Harvesters were supposed to be a myth, a story told to frighten young ones into staying close to home. Ancient legends spoke of biomechanical ships that devoured entire civilizations, but no one had seen them for over 1,000 cycles. The enemy adapts to every weapon we use against them, Thalon continued, his voice breaking. Our most advanced plasma cannons become useless after the first few shots. Our quantum torpedoes simply make them stronger. We have tried everything, but nothing works. They learn from every attack and become immune to it. Captain Roland ordered the ship to change course immediately. They would head to the emergency assembly point at the Nexus station, where the remaining free species were gathering to plan their last desperate defense. But as the Meridian's Edge accelerated through hyperspace, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The journey to Nexus Station took them through the Outer Rim territories, where several mining colonies had gone silent in recent days. As they dropped out of hyperspace near Epsilon Station, the crew witnessed something that would haunt them forever. The once thriving mining colony was completely dark, its massive orbital platforms twisted into impossible shapes, the stations. Metallic structures had been warped and reshaped into organic-looking formations that pulsed with a sickly green light. Where thousands of miners and their families had lived and worked, there was now only silence. The very asteroids that had been mined for precious metals were now hollow shells, drained of every useful element. By the void, whispered Chief Engineer. Moran, his tentacles trembling as he studied the sensor readings. They didn't just destroy it, they consumed everything. The metal, the rock, even the trace gases in the atmosphere. There's nothing left. Kira stared at the remains of Epsilon Station and realized that the Harvesters weren't just conquerors or raiders. They were something far worse. They were a force of nature that consumed everything in their path, leaving behind only empty husks of what had once been vibrant worlds. The ship's science officer, Dr. Zelen, had been analyzing the energy signatures left behind by the Harvester attack. Her findings were disturbing. The biomechanical ships seemed to operate on principles that defied conventional physics. They could reshape matter at the molecular level, turning solid metal into organic tissue that served their needs. The most troubling aspect, Dr. Zelen reported, is that they appear to be learning from each encounter. The energy patterns show increasing efficiency with each system they consume. They're not just growing stronger, they're becoming smarter. As the Meridian's Edge continued toward Nexus Station, they received another transmission from the Galactic Council. This one was different, encrypted, and marked with the highest security protocols. Ambassador Thalen appeared on screen again, but this time he was alone in a darkened chamber. "To those who receive this message," he said quietly, "we are preparing to implement the final protocol. There is one last option that the Council has kept secret for centuries. We are going to contact the Deathworlders." Kira had heard rumors of the Deathworlders, a species that lived in the isolated Terra system on the galaxy's edge. They were said to be the only known species that had evolved on a world that actively tried to kill them. While other civilizations had developed on peaceful worlds with stable climates, these beings had somehow survived on a planet filled with predators, natural disasters, and toxic atmospheres. "The humans," Thalen continued, "have been monitored from a distance for centuries. They are primitive by our standards, but they possess something we have lost: the ability to face extinction and fight back. If anyone can find a way to stop the harvesters, it might be them." The transmission ended with coordinates for a secret monitoring station in the Terra system. It would be a dangerous journey, taking them through uncharted space where the harvesters might be waiting. But it was their only hope. Captain Roland made the decision immediately. They would not go to Nexus Station. Instead, they would head directly to the Terra system and make contact with the humans. It was a violation of the non-interference directive, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The journey to human space took 3 days, during which the crew prepared for the most important first contact in galactic history. Kira studied what little information they had about humans, trying to understand what made them different from other species. The reports were confusing and often contradictory. Humans were described as both peaceful and violent, intelligent and primitive, compassionate and ruthless. They had somehow developed advanced technology while still maintaining tribal instincts. They were the only known species that had survived natural selection on a world where everything was trying to kill them. As the Meridian's edge approached the outer edge of the Terra system, their sensors detected something that made everyone on the bridge stop breathing. There were massive energy signatures approaching from the direction they had just come from. The harvesters had found them. The biomechanical ships emerged from hyperspace like nightmares made real. They were enormous, their hulls a twisted fusion of metal and living tissue that pulsed with alien life. Strange appendages extended from their sides, reaching out like grasping fingers as they scanned the surrounding space. "They're scanning us," reported the sensor operator, his voice barely above a whisper. "Their technology is analyzing our ship's composition and structure." Kira realized with growing horror that the harvesters were learning about their technology just by looking at them. Soon they would know everything about Villani ship design, their weapon systems, and their defenses. The knowledge would be shared with the entire harvester fleet, making them even more dangerous. As the alien ships moved closer, their hulls began to shift and change, adapting to counter any weapons the Meridian's edge might use against them. The crew watched in terrified fascination as the biomechanical vessels transformed themselves into the perfect predators for hunting Villani ships, but then something unexpected happened. Long-range sensors detected another energy signature approaching from deeper in the Terra system. It was different from anything in the galactic database, crude and primitive by civilized standards, but somehow threatening in a way that made even the harvesters pause. The humans were coming. Lieutenant Commander Blake was having the worst day of his military career, and it had started so well. The Deep Space Monitoring Station Watchtower 7 had been running routine surveillance of the outer system when the alien vessel appeared on their sensors. Protocol demanded they report the contact immediately, but something about the ship's behavior made Blake hesitate. The vessel wasn't approaching aggressively. Instead, it seemed to be running from something, broadcasting what the translation computers were slowly recognizing as a distress signal. Blake had spent 5 years monitoring alien communications from a distance, but this was the first time he had ever heard one of them sound genuinely terrified. Captain Torres arrived at the command center within minutes, his weathered face grim, as he studied the tactical display. The grizzled veteran had fought in the Titan Wars and survived 3 different alien encounters, but always from a safe distance. Direct contact with an alien species was something humanity had been preparing for but hoping to avoid. What do we know about them? Torres asked, settling into the command chair with the easy confidence of someone who had faced worse situations and lived to tell about it. The ship is Villani design, reported Specialist Martinez from the communications station. Our databases show they're one of the more peaceful species in the galactic community. They've never shown any aggressive tendencies toward human space. The station's AI, Marcus, processed the incoming transmissions with typical efficiency. The artificial intelligence had been designed to analyze alien communications and had spent decades learning the subtle patterns of interstellar diplomacy. What it found in the current transmission was unprecedented. "Commander," Marcus announced in his calm, synthetic voice, "I am detecting extreme distress indicators in the alien communication. The mathematical probability of deception is less than 0.01%. They appear to be requesting immediate assistance." Torres made a decision that would change human history. He ordered the communications team to establish a direct link with the alien vessel. The translation protocols had been tested in simulations, but this would be their first real-world application. Ambassador Kira appeared on the main screen, her blue-scaled features alien but somehow familiar, despite the obvious differences in their biology. Torres could see the universal signs of desperation and fear in her large dark eyes. She spoke in her native language, but the translation system rendered her words in clear English. "Human vessel, we come seeking help," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that the translator couldn't quite capture. "My name is Ambassador Kira of the Villani Republic. Our worlds are under attack by an ancient enemy that threatens all life in the galaxy." Blake exchanged glances with Torres. First contact protocols called for careful diplomatic procedures, but the alien's obvious distress made formal introductions seem inadequate. Torres leaned forward in his chair, his military bearing softening slightly. "Ambassador, I'm Captain Torres of the Terran Defense Force. You're in human space and we're willing to listen. But you need to understand that we don't get involved in galactic politics." Kira's relief was obvious, but it was quickly replaced by renewed urgency. She began transmitting data files that showed the scope of the Harvester threat. The images were horrifying even by human standards. Entire worlds stripped of life, massive biomechanical ships that defied conventional physics, and refugee fleets fleeing in terror from an enemy that seemed unstoppable. "The Harvesters have returned from the galactic void," Kira explained, her voice trembling despite her diplomatic training. "They consume everything in their path. Our most advanced weapons are useless against them because they adapt to every attack. 17 core worlds have already fallen." The command center fell, silent as the crew processed the implications. Torres had seen warfare at its worst, but this was something entirely different. The Harvesters weren't just conquering worlds, they were erasing them from existence. "Why come to us?" Torres asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "We're isolated from the galactic community. We have no stake in your wars." "Because you're the only species that might be able to stop them," Kira replied. "You're the only ones who understand what it means to fight for survival against impossible odds. Your world tried to kill you for millions of years and you survived. You became stronger." Dr. Park, the station's xenobiologist, pulled up everything in their database about the Harvesters. The files were classified and fragmentary, but they painted a picture of a species that had evolved in the deepest parts of space. They were perfect predators, designed by evolution to consume and adapt. "They're not just dangerous," Dr. Park reported, "they're the ultimate expression of natural selection. Every encounter makes them stronger, more efficient. They learn from their prey and become better hunters." Torres studied the tactical data with the eye of a professional warrior. He had spent his entire career fighting enemies that were bigger, stronger, and better equipped than human forces. But humans had always found a way to win through superior tactics, better training, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. "These biomechanical ships," he said, pointing to the display, They adapt to energy weapons? Yes, Kira confirmed. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, particle beams, nothing works twice. They analyze the attack and become immune to it. Smile crossed Torres' face, the kind of expression that had made enemy commanders nervous during the Titan Wars. What about kinetic weapons? Good old-fashioned high-velocity projectiles. Kira looked confused. Kinetic weapons are primitive. No civilized species has used them for centuries. That's because no civilized species grew up on a world where everything was trying to eat them, Torres replied. We never stopped improving our weapons because we never stopped needing them. The conversation was interrupted by proximity alarms. The station's sensors had detected multiple contacts approaching from deep space. The energy signatures matched those of the harvester ships that had been chasing Kira's vessel. They followed us, Kira said, her voice filled with despair. I've, led them directly to you. I'm sorry. Torres activated the station's battle protocols with practiced efficiency. Watchtower 7 wasn't a military installation, but it had been built by humans who understood that peace was temporary and war was always possible. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments, and the station's fusion reactor began charging its emergency systems. Don't apologize, Torres told Kira. You just gave us our first real look at these things. Marcus, analyze everything we can about their approach patterns and ship design. I want to know how they move, how they think, and how they die. The harvester ships emerged from hyperspace with predatory grace. They were massive, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with alien life. Strange appendages extended from their sides, scanning the human station with senses that had evolved to hunt across the galaxy. They're beautiful, whispered Specialist Martinez, then immediately looked embarrassed at his own words. Beautiful things are often the most dangerous, Torres replied. Ask anyone who's ever faced a Terran tiger or a deep-sea predator. Evolution doesn't care about aesthetics. The lead harvester ship began transmitting on multiple frequencies, trying to establish communication. But the message wasn't diplomatic. It was a demand for surrender, broadcast in the languages of a dozen extinct species. They want us to give up, Blake reported. They're offering to make our deaths quick if we don't resist. Torres laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise even himself. They clearly don't know much about humans. Marcus, prepare the station for ramming speed. Set the fusion reactor to overload. The AI processed the order without hesitation. Ramming protocol engaged, reactor overload in 60 seconds. Kira watched in horror as the human station began accelerating toward the harvester ships. You can't sacrifice yourself for us. We barely know each other. That's not why we're doing this, Torres explained as he strapped himself into the command chair. We're doing this because someone has to. And because the best way to learn about an enemy is to fight them? The Watchtower 7 struck the lead harvester ship with the force of a small asteroid. The station's fusion reactor detonated at the moment of impact, creating a brilliant explosion that lit up the void. The harvester vessel was damaged but not destroyed, its biomechanical hull already beginning to regenerate, but something had changed. The alien ship was transmitting on emergency frequencies, broadcasting data about the encounter to the rest of the harvester fleet. Torres' sacrifice had taught them something important about humans, and the knowledge was being shared across their entire species. As the remaining harvester ships retreated to regroup, Kira realized that the humans had just announced their presence to the galaxy's most dangerous predators. In 72 hours, the entire harvester fleet would know about Earth and its strange inhabitants. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin. Admiral Rodriguez stood in the war room of Terra Command, staring at the holographic display that showed the approaching harvester fleet. The biomechanical ships were massive, their twisted hulls pulsing with alien life as they moved through space like predators sensing wounded prey. She had fought in 3 major conflicts, but this was different. This was extinction knocking at humanity's door. Status report, she commanded, her voice cutting through the tension that filled the underground command center. Harvester fleet We'll reach Earth's outer system in 68 hours, reported Colonel Hayes, his weathered face showing the strain of 3 days without sleep. Long-range sensors indicate at least 200 ships, possibly more. They're maintaining formation and scanning everything in their path, Rodriguez nodded grimly. The destruction of Watchtower 7 had bought them precious time, but it had also revealed humanity's location to the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Captain Torres' sacrifice had been brave, but it had also doomed their species unless they could do something unprecedented. Ambassador Kira stood beside the tactical display, her blue-scaled features showing a mixture of hope and terror. She had been aboard the Meridian's Edge when the human station rammed the harvester ship, and the memory of that moment still haunted her. The humans had sacrificed themselves without hesitation, as if death was just another tactical option. "Admiral," Kira said quietly, "you don't understand what you're facing. The harvesters have consumed 17 core worlds. They've destroyed civilizations that had been building starships for thousands of years. Your species is brave, but bravery alone won't be enough." Rodriguez turned to face the alien diplomat, her dark eyes reflecting the cold determination that had made her the youngest admiral in human history. "Ambassador, with respect, you don't understand what you're looking at. Humanity didn't survive on Earth by being brave. We survived by being more dangerous than everything trying to kill us." She gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show Earth's solar system. What Kira saw made her gills flutter with confusion. The system looked different from her previous scans, as if entire sections had been hidden or disguised. "Marcus, initiate Prometheus Protocol," Rodriguez commanded. The AI synthetic voice filled the command center. Prometheus Protocol activated, revealing hidden assets and military installations. The display transformed before Kira's eyes. What had appeared to be a simple system with one inhabited world suddenly revealed itself as a massive military complex. Hidden bases emerged from asteroid fields, weapon platforms uncloaked around gas giants, and spacecraft carriers that had been disguised as space debris powered up their engines. "By the void," Kira whispered. "How long have you been preparing for this?" "Since the first day we looked up at the stars," Rodriguez replied. "Every human child learns the same lesson. The universe is trying to kill you, and the only way to survive is to be ready to kill it back." The truth was more complex than Rodriguez let on. Humanity had been isolated for centuries, watching the galaxy from a distance and learning from the mistakes of other species. They had seen peaceful civilizations fall to aggressive neighbors, watched advanced empires collapse from internal strife, and observed the rise and fall of galactic powers, but humans had learned something different from their observations. While other species built beautiful cities and elegant starships, humans had built weapons. While other civilizations pursued art and philosophy, humans had pursued the science of destruction. Every natural disaster, every predator, every challenge their world had thrown at them had been turned into a lesson in warfare. Commander Rex emerged from the hangar bay, his flight suit bearing the scars of countless training exercises. The veteran pilot had volunteered to lead the first wave of human fighters against the Harvester fleet, knowing that he might not survive the encounter. "Admiral, the fleet is ready," he reported. "Every pilot knows the mission parameters. We're not trying to win this fight, we're trying to learn how these things die." The human fleet that powered up throughout the solar system was unlike anything in the galactic database. The ships were ugly by civilized standards, their hulls covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. They had been designed by a species that understood one simple truth. In a fight to the death, beauty was a luxury they couldn't afford. Dr. Morgan, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, had spent the last 3 days analyzing the harvester ship that Torres had damaged. Her findings were disturbing but not surprising to anyone who understood human nature. "The biomechanical design is impressive," she reported, "but it has limitations. They adapt to energy weapons by absorbing and redirecting the energy. But they can't adapt to kinetic weapons because there's no energy to absorb." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Good, what about their regeneration capabilities?" "That's more complex," Morgan continued. They can rebuild damaged tissue, but it requires raw materials. They're not creating matter from nothing, they're recycling existing materials. Deny them resources and they can't heal. The first contact with the Harvester Vanguard occurred at Jupiter's orbit. Commander Rex led a squadron of human fighters against scout ships that had been sent ahead to probe Earth's defenses. The engagement lasted only minutes, but it revealed everything both sides needed to know about each other. The Harvester ships were fast and deadly, their biomechanical hulls bristling with organic weapons that fired bursts of concentrated energy. They moved with predatory grace, adapting their tactics as they learned about human fighter design and weapon systems, but the humans had advantages that the Harvesters didn't expect. Their ships were designed for close-quarters combat, built to survive the kind of brutal encounters that had been common during the Titan Wars. More importantly, human pilots had been trained to fight against opponents who were bigger, stronger, and better equipped. "Contact," Rex reported over the comm system. 3 Harvester scouts moving to intercept. They're scanning our ships. The alien vessels began to adapt their hulls to counter human weapons, but they quickly discovered that humans had learned to expect adaptation. The fighter squadron carried multiple weapon systems, each designed to exploit different vulnerabilities. "Switch to kinetic rounds," Rex ordered. "Let's see how they like good old-fashioned bullets." The human fighters opened fire with weapons that hadn't been used in galactic warfare for centuries. High-velocity projectiles tore through the Harvester ship's biomechanical hulls, causing damage that couldn't be easily repaired. The alien vessels tried to adapt, but kinetic weapons offered no energy to absorb or redirect. One of the Harvester ships attempted to ram Rex's fighter, but the human pilot was ready. He had trained for this exact scenario, practicing against opponents who were faster and more maneuverable than his ship. As the alien vessel closed in, Rex triggered his fighter's self-destruct sequence. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it also transmitted valuable data back to the human fleet. The Harvesters weren't invincible. They could be hurt, and they could be killed. The knowledge spread through the human forces like wildfire. The main Harvester fleet arrived at Earth's orbital space expecting to find a cowering civilization. Instead, they found Admiral Rodriguez and the entire human fleet waiting in formation. The sight that greeted them was unprecedented in their long history of conquest. Humanity had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Asteroid fields had been mined and weaponized. Gas giants had been converted into fuel depots for the fleet, and the space around Earth bristled with defensive platforms that had been disguised as orbital debris. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You have entered human space without permission and with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why evolution made us the apex predator on the most dangerous world in the galaxy." The response from the Harvester fleet was immediate and predictable. The biomechanical ships began to advance, their hulls shifting and adapting as they prepared for battle. But something was different about their approach. For the first time in their species' history, they were moving cautiously. The Battle of Earth began at Saturn's rings, where the human fleet had established their forward positions. The engagement was brutal and decisive, with both sides learning hard lessons about their opponents. The Harvesters discovered that humans didn't just fight to survive, they fought to win. Regardless of the cost. As the battle raged across the solar system, one thing became clear to everyone involved: the galaxy's most dangerous predators had finally met their match. The Deathworlders had awakened, and they were ready to prove that Earth's children were more dangerous than anything the Void could throw at them. But even as the human fleet pressed their advantage, long-range sensors detected something that made Admiral Rodriguez's blood run cold. Something massive was emerging from the galactic void, something that made the current Harvester fleet look like a scouting party. The real war was about to begin. The Altair system had once been home to billions of beings across 4 inhabited worlds. Now it was a graveyard of twisted metal and lifeless rock, the perfect battleground for humanity's most desperate gambit. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Prometheus, watching the massive shape of the Harvester mothership emerge from hyperspace like a nightmare made real. The biomechanical Leviathan was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in organic structures that pulsed with alien life. Countless smaller ships moved around it like parasites, their hulls shifting and adapting as they sensed the presence of the human fleet. This was the true heart of the Harvester species, the vessel that had consumed 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. "Sensors are having trouble getting accurate readings," reported Lieutenant Chun from the tactical station. "The ship's hull is interfering with our scanning systems. It's like it's designed to be invisible to conventional sensors." Rodriguez nodded grimly. The past 72 hours had been a nightmare of running battles and desperate evacuations. The human fleet had fought the Harvester vanguard across 3 star systems, learning hard lessons about their enemy's capabilities. But every encounter had taught them something new, about how to kill the things that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. Ambassador Kira stood beside the command chair, her blue-scaled features showing the strain of watching her people's ancient enemy up close. She had seen the mothership in archive footage from the last Great War, but seeing it in person was different. It radiated a sense of hunger that seemed to fill the void around it. "That ship has been traveling between galaxies for millions of years," she said quietly. "It's consumed entire civilizations, learned from every species it's encountered. How can we possibly fight something like that?" "The same way we fight everything else," Rodriguez replied. "We find out what it needs to survive, and then we take it away." Commander Rex was already in his fighter, leading a reconnaissance squadron toward the mothership's outer defenses. The veteran pilot had survived the initial battles with the Harvester fleet, but he knew that this engagement would be different. The mothership wasn't just a vessel, it was a living entity that had evolved to be the perfect predator. "Getting some strange readings out here," Rex reported over the comm system. "The ship's hull is covered in what looks like sensor pods. It's scanning everything in the system, learning about our ships and weapons." Dr. Morgan worked frantically at her station, analyzing the data streaming in from the reconnaissance flights. The xenobiologist had made a disturbing discovery during the analysis of captured Harvester technology. The biomechanical ships weren't just adaptive, they were intelligent in a way that defied human understanding. "Admiral," she reported, "I'm detecting energy signatures that suggest the mothership is communicating with something. It's not just coordinating with the smaller ships, it's receiving instructions from elsewhere." Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. Instructions from where? Unknown, but the signals are coming from outside the galaxy. Whatever created the Harvesters, it's still out there, still controlling them. The battle began when the mothership launched its first wave of attack craft. The biomechanical fighters were different from anything the humans had faced before. They moved with predatory intelligence, adapting their tactics in real time as they encountered human weapons and defensive systems, but the humans had learned from their previous encounters. Captain Torres' sacrifice at Watchtower 7 had taught them that the Harvesters could be damaged by kinetic weapons. The battles at Jupiter and Saturn had shown them that the biomechanical ships required raw materials to regenerate. Now they were ready to put that knowledge to use. "All ships implement protocol starvation," Rodriguez ordered. "Deny them any resources they can use for repairs." The human fleet spread out across the Altair system, using hit-and-run tactics. That had been perfected during the Titan Wars. They struck at the Harvester ships with kinetic weapons, then retreated before the enemy could adapt. But more importantly, they began systematically destroying everything in the system that the biomechanical ships could use as raw materials. Asteroids were vaporized with nuclear charges. Gas clouds were dispersed with electromagnetic pulses. Even the debris from destroyed ships was collected and incinerated, denying the Harvesters any source of materials for regeneration. The mothership responded by launching larger attack waves, but something unexpected happened. Instead of pressing the attack, the biomechanical fighters began retreating back to the mothership. Dr. Morgan realized what was happening with growing horror. "They're not retreating," she announced. "They're being consumed by the mother ship. It's cannibalizing its own fleet to repair battle damage." Rodriguez watched in fascination as the massive vessel began devouring its own escort ships. The biomechanical fighters didn't resist. They simply allowed themselves to be absorbed into the mothership's hull. It was the ultimate expression of a species that had evolved to consume everything in its path. That's their weakness, she realized. They're not just predators, they're parasites. They need constant feeding to survive. Commander Rex volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. He would lead a strike team deep into the mothership's biomechanical hull, planting charges that would disrupt the vessel's ability to process consumed materials. It was a suicide mission, but it was also humanity's best chance to cripple their enemy. The strike team consisted of 12 volunteers, each piloting a specially modified fighter equipped with drilling equipment and explosives. They approached the mothership during the confusion of a major fleet engagement, using the chaos to mask their approach. The surface of the mothership was unlike anything in human experience. The hull pulsed with organic life, covered in structures that seemed to serve as both sensors and weapons. Strange appendages reached out toward the approaching fighters, trying to capture them for analysis and consumption. Rex's team drilled through the biomechanical hull using plasma cutters designed for asteroid mining. The interior of the ship was a nightmare of organic corridors and pulsing walls that seemed to watch their every move. But as they penetrated deeper into the vessel, they discovered something that changed everything. The mothership wasn't just a warship. It was a prison. Thousands of pods lined the organic corridors, each containing a living being from one of the consumed worlds. The harvesters hadn't just destroyed civilizations. They had been collecting them, storing representatives from each conquered species in suspended animation. "My God," whispered Sergeant Kim as she studied the pods. "They're not just killers, they're collectors? They've been preserving samples from every species they've encountered." Rex realized that the mission had just become infinitely more complex. They couldn't just destroy the mother ship. They had to find a way to free the imprisoned beings. But as they began opening the pods, they discovered the most horrifying truth of all. The beings inside weren't just prisoners. They were being used as living databases, their memories and knowledge harvested by the harvesters to improve their hunting techniques. Every species they had ever encountered had been forced to contribute to their own destruction. As the strike team worked to free the imprisoned beings, they uncovered the final secret of the harvester species. The biomechanical ships weren't the apex predators they appeared to be. They were running from something worse, something that had driven them from their home galaxy millions of years ago. The mother ship's dying transmission revealed the truth. That would change everything. The harvesters weren't invaders, they were refugees. And the thing they had been running from had just detected the unusual energy signatures of human weapons. Something called the Silence was coming, and it was far more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever faced. The harvesters had been trying to build an army to fight it, consuming civilizations to create a force strong enough to stand against the true threat. As the mothership began to die, its biomechanical hull collapsing in on itself, the freed prisoners revealed the location of the approaching entity. The Silence was a galaxy-consuming force that had been following the Harvester's trail of destruction for eons. Erasing everything in its path, Rodriguez realized that humanity had just won a battle, but the war was far from over. The real enemy was still coming, and it would make the Harvester fleet look like a minor inconvenience. The galaxy's true test was about to begin. 6 months after the destruction of the Harvester mothership, the galaxy had transformed into something unrecognizable. The Terran Defense Coalition operated from a massive space station built in the ruins of the Altair system, its corridors filled with beings from dozens of different species, all working toward a common goal. Admiral Rodriguez stood in the command center, watching the tactical display that showed the approach of something that made the Harvester fleet look like a training exercise. The Silence had been detected at the galaxy's edge 3 weeks ago, and its approach had been marked by the systematic disappearance of entire star systems. Not destroyed, not consumed, but simply erased from existence as if they had never been. Long-range sensors showed a void in space that seemed to swallow light itself, moving inexorably toward the populated sectors of the galaxy. Ambassador Kira worked alongside human technicians, her diplomatic skills proving invaluable in coordinating the coalition's desperate preparations. The Villani had become humanity's closest allies, their peaceful nature complementing the humans' warrior instincts. Together, they had built something that had never existed before, a truly unified galactic defense force. Status report, Rodriguez commanded, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the command center. The silence has consumed the outer rim sectors, reported Colonel Hayes, his weathered face showing the strain of weeks without adequate sleep. 12 star systems have vanished completely. No debris, no energy signatures, nothing. It's like they were never there. Dr. Morgan had spent months analyzing the data from the freed Harvester prisoners, trying to understand the true nature of the threat they faced. Her findings were disturbing even by the standards of a species that had grown up on a world trying to kill them. The silence isn't a weapon or a ship, she explained to the assembled coalition leaders. It's a living entity that exists in the spaces between galaxies. It's been cleaning up the Harvester's destruction for millions of years, trying to restore balance to the universe. The revelation had changed everything. The Harvesters hadn't been evil conquerors, they had been a species running from something far worse. The silence was the galaxy's immune system, designed to eliminate anything that threatened the cosmic order, and humanity's violent response to the Harvester. Threat had marked them as the next target for elimination. Commander Rex stood before the assembled pilots of the Coalition fleet, his face grim as he outlined their mission. The veteran fighter pilot had survived every major engagement of the war, but he knew that this battle would be different. They weren't fighting to win, they were fighting to make first contact with something that existed beyond normal understanding. We're going to try something that's never been attempted before, he told the mixed group of human and alien pilots. We're going to communicate with a galaxy-eating entity by making it notice us. The volunteer fleet that assembled at the barrier. Nebula was the strangest military force in galactic history. Human dreadnoughts flew alongside Villani research vessels, their crews working together despite fundamental differences in their approach to warfare. The Coalition had learned to combine human aggression with alien knowledge, creating tactics that neither species could have developed alone. The silence arrived at the nebula like a wave of nothingness, its presence marked only by the systematic disappearance of stars and planets. But as it approached the Coalition fleet, something unprecedented happened. The entity seemed to pause as if surprised by what it found. It's scanning us, reported Dr. Morgan from her position aboard the research vessel New Horizon. But not like the Harvesters did. It's trying to understand what we are. Captain Torres had survived the destruction of Watchtower 7, rescued from the wreckage by a passing merchant vessel. Now he commanded the dreadnought Defiance, leading a squadron of ships directly into the heart of the approaching entity. His voice crackled over the comm system as he reported his findings. The silence isn't destroying us, he announced with surprise. It's trying to communicate. I'm getting telepathic contact from something that's older than most galaxies. The first communication between humanity and the silence occurred in the mind of Torres, mediated by the telepathic abilities of the rescued Harvester prisoners. The entity's thoughts were vast and ancient, filled with the weariness of eons spent maintaining cosmic balance. The silence wasn't evil, it was tired. It had been cleaning up the Harvester's destruction for millions of years, trying to restore the natural order to a universe that had been thrown into chaos by their consuming hunger. Every galaxy they had visited had been left damaged, its civilizations destroyed or traumatized by the encounter, but humanity was different. Instead of being consumed or fleeing in terror, they had fought back. They had not only defeated the Harvesters but had learned to work with other species, creating something that had never existed before, a truly cooperative galactic civilization. You interest me, the silence communicated through Tora's mind. Your species chooses to protect rather than consume. This is ... expected. The revelation that followed changed everything. The silence offered humanity a choice that had never been given to any other species. They could return to their isolated world and live in peace. Or they could accept the responsibility of becoming the galaxy's guardians. The harvesters were my failure, the entity explained. I created them to maintain balance, but they became something worse than the chaos they were meant to prevent. I have been trying to correct that mistake for eons. Admiral Rodriguez made the decision that would define humanity's future. Speaking for her entire species, she accepted the responsibility of becoming the galaxy's protectors. But she did so with conditions that reflected humanity's unique understanding of what it meant to be a guardian. We'll take the job, she told the ancient entity. But we do it our way. We don't just eliminate threats, we try to understand them. We don't just maintain order, we try to help civilizations grow and thrive. The silence accepted humanity's terms, recognizing that their approach might succeed where its own methods had failed. The entity began to withdraw from the galaxy, but not before sharing knowledge that would help humanity in their new role as galactic guardians. The Coalition fleet was transformed by technologies that existed beyond normal physics. Human ships were equipped with sensors that could detect threats across multiple dimensions, while alien vessels were upgraded with weapons that could strike at the fundamental forces of reality itself. But the most important change was philosophical. Humanity had learned to combine their warrior instincts with the peaceful wisdom of their alien allies. They became protectors who understood that sometimes the greatest act of mercy was to stand between danger and those who couldn't defend themselves. The final scene of the war took place in the restored Altair system, where a new generation of beings learned to work together. Human children played alongside young Villani, their games supervised by teachers from a dozen different species. The Coalition had become more than a military alliance, it had become a true galactic community. Ambassador Kira stood in the observation deck of the new Altair station, watching human patrol ships depart for the void between galaxies. The sight still amazed her. These beings who had chosen to spend their lives standing guard against threats that most species couldn't even imagine. They're remarkable, she said to Dr. Morgan, who was analyzing data from the latest deep space patrol. They chose to become guardians not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Dr. Morgan nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed human ships scattered across the galaxy's edge. That's what makes them dangerous to our enemies and valuable to our friends. They don't just fight to survive, they fight to protect others. The final entry in Ambassador Kira's diplomatic log captured the transformation that had occurred since humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. The species that had once been isolated on their deadly world had become the galaxy's greatest protectors, standing watch against threats that emerged from the cosmic void. Today I learned that the most dangerous predator in the universe is one that chooses to protect instead of consume, she wrote. The galaxy is safe because the humans are watching, and they have chosen to stand between the darkness and the light. In the years that followed, human ships would patrol the spaces between galaxies, their crews drawn from every species in the Coalition. They would face threats that defied imagination, encounter entities that existed beyond normal understanding, and always find a way to protect the civilizations that depended on them. The Deathworlders had found their purpose, and the galaxy would never be the same. The quiet hum of machines filled the control room of Luna Base 7 as Commander Blake Morrison stared at the monitor screens that showed nothing but empty space. For 15 years he had watched the darkness between stars, waiting for something that might never come. Tonight felt different though, like the universe was holding its breath. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked at her station nearby, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as she analyzed radio signals from distant galaxies. She was the best xenolinguist Earth had ever produced, able to decode alien languages that most humans could not even imagine. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and coffee stains marked her white lab coat from another long night of work. The first beep came at exactly 2,347 hours. Blake turned toward the sound, expecting another false alarm from a pulsar or dying star. Instead, he saw Elena's face go pale as she stared at her readings. "Blake, you need to see this," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the machine. "Noise. This is not natural. Someone is trying to talk to us." Blake moved quickly to her station, his military training kicking in as he recognized the urgency in her tone. The screen showed wave patterns unlike anything he had seen before. Too organized to be random, too complex to be simple physics. "Where is it coming from?" he asked, already reaching for the emergency communication device that would connect him directly to Earth Defense Command. "Kepler 442 system," Elena replied, her fingers working frantically to clean up the signal. "About 1,200 light-years away." "But Blake, this transmission is not new. Based on the signal degradation, this message has been traveling through space for over 1,000 years. The wave patterns began to shift on the screen, and Elena's translation software started picking up mathematical sequences. Prime numbers, geometric formulas, and universal constants appeared in the data stream. Then came something that made both of them freeze. "Help us," Elena read from her translation display. "The Devourers come, all worlds burn. Only the Deathworlders can save us now." Blake felt his blood turn cold. In all his years of monitoring deep space, he had never heard of anything called Deathworlders. The message continued to unfold on Elena's screen, showing crude star maps and what appeared to be tactical information about some kind of massive military force. "Elena, can you clean this up more?" "I need to know exactly what we are dealing with here," Blake said. Already dialing the emergency line to Earth, the next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Admiral Richard Stone arrived at Luna Base 7, aboard the fastest military transport available, bringing with him a team of experts from every branch of Earth's defense forces. The conference room that had been empty for years suddenly buzzed with activity as generals, scientists, and intelligence officers crowded around Elena's displays. "Show me what you have found," Admiral Stone commanded, his weathered face grim. As he studied the alien transmission, Elena took a deep breath and began her presentation. "The message comes from a species that calls itself the Corvani. They describe themselves as a peaceful civilization that has been part of something they call the galactic community for over 2,000 years. 3 months ago, their outer colonies were attacked by something they call the Devourers." The main screen filled with translated text and images that the Corvani had somehow encoded into their distress signal. The pictures showed beautiful cities on peaceful worlds, then the same locations reduced to barren rock. Entire planets stripped of all life, leaving behind only dead stone floating in space. "The Devourers consume everything," Elena continued. "Plants, animals, entire ecosystems. They take all organic matter and leave nothing behind. According to this message, they have already destroyed 12 inhabited worlds in the Corvani system." General Marcus Webb, Earth's supreme military commander, leaned forward in his chair. "What does this have to do with us? These aliens are over 1,000 light-years away." Elena's face grew even more serious. "Because the Devourers are not stopping with the Corvani. The message includes star charts showing their expansion pattern. They are moving in this direction, consuming everything in their path. At their current speed, they will reach inhabited systems in this sector within 6 months." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Stone was the first to speak. "What did they mean by Deathworlders? Why are they calling for us specifically?" "That is the most interesting part," Elena replied, pulling up another section of the transmission. "The galactic community has been aware of Earth for centuries. They have been watching us, studying us, and apparently they are terrified of us." She displayed translated text that described human history from an alien perspective. Wars that lasted for decades, survival in environments that would kill most other species, and a refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. The aliens described Earth as a death world, a planet so harsh and dangerous that only the most fearsome creatures could survive there. They think we are monsters, Elena said quietly. But right now, they need monsters to fight something even worse. The transmission continued with more details about the Devourers. They were described as a hive-minded species that had been consuming worlds for thousands of years, growing stronger with each planet they devoured. No military force had ever been able to stop them. Entire civilizations had been wiped out trying to fight them. The Corvani are not warriors, Elena explained. None of the species in the galactic community are. They have lived in peace for so long that they have forgotten how to fight. They have weapons, but they do not know how to use them effectively. They surrender too easily, run too quickly, and care too much about minimizing casualties. Blake understood immediately. But humans do not have that problem. Exactly, Elena nodded. The message describes humans as beings who get stronger when threatened, who fight harder when cornered, and who will sacrifice everything to protect others. They are calling us Deathworlders because we come from a world that tried to kill us every day, and instead of dying, we learned to kill it back. Admiral Stone stood up, his mind already working through the implications. How much time do we have before they reach Earth? If their expansion pattern continues at the same rate, approximately 18 months, Elena replied. But there are dozens of inhabited systems between here and there. Billions of lives that will be lost if we do nothing. The room erupted in discussion as military officers debated response strategies and scientists analyzed the alien data. Through it all, Blake found himself thinking about the desperation in that 1,000-year-old message. Some alien scientists had spent their final moments encoding a plea for help, sending it into the darkness in the hope that someone would hear and respond. As the meeting continued late into the night, more details emerged from the transmission. The Devourers had ships the size of cities, weapons that could crack planets, and a complete lack of interest in negotiation or surrender. They were not evil in any way humans could understand. They simply saw organic life as food. There is one more thing, Elena said as the discussion began to wind down. The transmission is not complete. There are still parts of it coming in, but the signal is getting weaker. The Corvani homeworld may have already fallen. Admiral Stone nodded grimly. Then we may be the only ones left who can stop this. How long will it take to mobilize our forces? Full mobilization will take weeks, General Webb replied. But we can have advanced scouts moving within hours if necessary. The meeting broke up as officers rushed to their various commands, beginning the process of preparing Earth for its first interstellar war. Blake remained in the control room with Elena, watching as the alien message continued to trickle in from across the galaxy. Do you think we can actually stop them? Elena asked quietly. Blake looked at the star charts showing the Devourer's path of destruction, then at the descriptions of human warfare that had so impressed the alien observers. I think we are about to find out what it really means to be called a Deathworlder. The transmission suddenly spiked with activity, and new text appeared on Elena's screen. The message was fragmenting, breaking up as whatever was sending it finally died, but the last few words came through clearly. The Deathworlders are our only hope. Please, if you can hear this, help us. Help us all. Then the signal went silent, leaving only the empty hum of machines and the weight of an entire galaxy's desperate plea for salvation. The morning sun rose over Earth's capital as emergency sirens wailed across every major city on the planet. For the first time in human history, every government leader sat in the same room, their faces grim as they listened to Admiral Stone's briefing about the alien threat approaching their world. General Marcus Webb stood before the massive display screen that showed the Devourer's path of destruction across the galaxy. Red dots marked dead worlds, while blue dots showed the remaining inhabited systems that lay in their path. Earth was one of the blue dots, and the red ones were getting closer. Ladies and gentlemen, General Webb began, his voice carrying the weight of command that had been forged in a dozen earthly conflicts. We have approximately 6 months before the Devourers reach the outer systems of our sector. We have 18 months before they reach Earth itself. President Martinez of the American Federation leaned forward. General, what exactly are we dealing with? These aliens, can they be reasoned with? No, Madam President, Webb replied firmly. According to the Corvani transmission, the Devourers do not communicate except to demand surrender. They consume all organic matter on every world they encounter. There's no negotiation, no mercy, and no compromise. Prime Minister Singh of the Asian Alliance shook his head. How is it possible that an entire galaxy full of advanced civilizations cannot stop one species? Dr. James Foster, Earth's leading expert on xenobiology and military strategy, stepped forward to answer. Because, sir, they are not like us. The galactic community has lived in peace for over 2,000 years. They have forgotten how to fight wars. More importantly, they have never learned how to fight the kind of war that humans excel at. The room fell silent as Foster continued his explanation. The alien races we are dealing with evolved on what they call garden worlds, planets with stable climates, abundant resources, and very few natural dangers. They never had to compete for survival the way humans did. They never had to fight predators, survive ice ages, or adapt to constantly changing environments. Captain Lisa Park, one of Earth's most decorated starship pilots, had been studying the alien tactical data for hours. Dr. Foster is right, she said, moving to the display controls. Look at their battle formations. They fight like they are playing a game with rules. Neat formations, minimal casualties, predetermined retreat conditions. They surrender when they reach a certain loss percentage. The display showed recordings of battles between the Devourers and various alien species. The pattern was always the same: organized formations, conventional tactics, and surrender when losses became too high. The Devourers simply overwhelmed them with superior numbers and firepower. But that is not how humans fight, General Webb said with a dark smile. We fight dirty. We use the environment as a weapon. We sacrifice individual units to achieve strategic objectives. We fight harder when we are losing, and we never surrender. Chancellor Petrov of the European Union looked troubled. Are you suggesting we are naturally more violent than other species? Not more violent, Dr. Foster corrected. More adaptable. More creative. More willing to accept casualties in pursuit of victory. The Corvani message describes humans as Deathworlders because we come from a planet that has been trying to kill us for millions of years. Every day of human existence has been a battle for survival. The truth of this statement began to sink in as Foster continued. We evolved alongside saber-toothed cats, survived ice ages, lived through plagues that killed half our population, and thrived in environments that would kill most alien species within hours. We are not monsters, we are survivors. General Webb activated another display showing Earth's current military capabilities. We have been preparing for interstellar warfare for decades, even before we knew there was anyone out there to fight. Our weapons are designed to function in any environment. Our soldiers are trained to adapt to any situation. And our entire military philosophy is based on the assumption that we will be outnumbered and outgunned. The mobilization had already begun. Across the planet, military bases buzzed with activity as soldiers, sailors, and pilots prepared for humanity's first war among the stars. Factory workers began converting civilian manufacturing plants to produce weapons and spacecraft. Scientists worked around the clock to adapt existing technology for space combat. Park had been given command of the first reconnaissance mission to the edge of human space. Her ship, the UES Ranger, was humanity's most advanced scout vessel, designed to operate independently in hostile territory for months at a time. As she walked through the ship's corridors, checking on her crew's preparations, she found herself thinking about the alien refugees they might encounter. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Tom Bradley, her weapons officer, "we have finished installing the new sensor arrays. If there are any alien ships in our patrol area, we will find them." Park nodded, but her mind was on the tactical data they had received. The Devourers' ships were massive, heavily armed, and apparently unstoppable. Human vessels were smaller, faster, and more maneuverable, but they had never been tested against alien technology. "Tom, what do you think our chances are?" she asked quietly. Bradley considered the question carefully. "Against any other species, we would probably win. Against the Devourers? I honestly do not know. But I know one thing. They have never fought humans before. They have no idea what we are capable of." Back on Earth, the mobilization continued with frightening efficiency. President Martinez had signed executive orders that converted the entire economy to wartime production. Prime Minister Singh had activated reserves that brought every former soldier back to active duty. Chancellor Petrov had opened military academies to train civilians in basic combat skills, but the most important work was being done by scientists like Dr. Foster, who were studying every piece of alien technology they could find. The Corvani transmission had included technical specifications for their weapons and ships, all of which were centuries ahead of human technology. "The good news," Foster explained to a group of military engineers, "is that their weapons are designed to fight other aliens. They use energy-based systems that are very effective against the materials and technologies used by the galactic community. The bad news is that they are much more powerful than anything we have." Commander Jake Wilson, one of Earth's top military tacticians, had been analyzing the Devourers' battle patterns for days. "They rely on overwhelming firepower and superior numbers," he reported to General Webb. "They expect their enemies to retreat when losses become too high. They do not know how to fight an enemy that refuses to give up." The first test of human resolve came sooner than expected. Captain Park's reconnaissance mission encountered a group of alien refugee ships at the edge of the solar system. The aliens were fleeing from a Devourer attack that had destroyed their homeworld just days earlier. "This is Captain Park of the Earth Vessel Ranger," she transmitted to the refugee fleet. "We are here to help." The response came in broken English, translated by the refugees' limited computer systems. "Earth ship, you must flee. The Devourers come, all worlds die. Even the Deathworlders cannot stop them." Park felt her blood run cold. "How far behind you are they?" 3 days, maybe 4, came the reply. "Devourer scout ships move faster than main fleet. They will arrive soon." The news hit Earth like a physical blow. The Devourers were not 6 months away, they were already here. Advanced scout ships were moving through the outer systems, preparing for the arrival of the main fleet. Humanity's first interstellar war was about to begin. General Webb convened an emergency meeting of all Earth's military leaders. The situation had changed completely. Instead of having months to prepare, they had days. Instead of meeting the enemy far from Earth, they would be fighting in their own solar system. "All available ships are to form a defensive perimeter around Earth," Webb ordered. "We will make our stand here, in our own space, where we know every asteroid and every gravitational anomaly that might give us an advantage." Dr. Foster had been analyzing the refugee testimonies and had reached a disturbing conclusion. "The Devourers are not just coming to Earth," he announced. "They are coming because they have heard about us. The galactic community's messages about the Deathworlders have attracted their attention. They want to see what all the fuss is about." The implications were staggering. Humanity had become a target, not because they were in the Devourer's path, but because they were famous throughout the galaxy as the most dangerous species alive. The aliens' desperate plea for help had doomed them all. As the final preparations were made, Captain Park received new orders. Instead of reconnaissance, she would be leading the first human strike force into battle against an alien enemy. Her ship, and a dozen others like it, would be humanity's first line of defense. "Remember," General Webb told the assembled captains, "we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for every species in the galaxy that the Devourers have terrorized. We are fighting to show the universe what Deathworlders are truly capable of." The final hours before battle were spent in quiet preparation. Soldiers checked their weapons, pilots ran through combat scenarios, and officers reviewed tactical plans that might save their world. But in the back of everyone's mind was the same question: would being called Deathworlders be enough to save them from the approaching darkness? The answer would come soon enough. Long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures approaching from the outer system. The Devourers had arrived, and humanity's greatest test was about to begin. Asterisk, asterisk, the darkness between Neptune and Pluto had never seemed so empty as Captain Rex Hamilton stared out at the void from the bridge of the UES Defiance. His ship was the flagship of humanity's first interstellar battle fleet, and in 6 hours they would meet an enemy that had never been defeated in 1,000 years of conquest. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Tom Bradley from the weapons station. Range 400,000 kilometers and closing. Hamilton felt his heart skip as the enemy finally appeared on the main display. The Devourer ships were nothing like the sleek vessels of human design. They looked like massive chunks of metal and flesh fused together, bristling with weapons that glowed with an eerie green light. Each one was the size of a small city, and there were dozens of them approaching in perfect formation. "My God," whispered Ambassador Nina Cross, the diplomatic representative who had insisted on being present for first contact. "They are huge." "Size does not win battles," Hamilton replied, though he could not keep the concern out of his voice. "Tom, what are your readings on their weapons?" Bradley's fingers danced across his control panel. "Energy levels are off the charts, sir. Each ship is putting out more power than our entire fleet combined. But their weapon systems are designed for long-range bombardment, not close-quarters fighting." The tactical display showed the approaching Devourer fleet in relation to the human defensive formation. Where the alien ships moved in rigid lines, the human vessels spread out in a loose formation that could adapt quickly to changing conditions. It was the difference between a parade and a hunting pack. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Sarah Kim. "They are trying to communicate." Hamilton nodded to Ambassador Cross. "Put it through." The main screen flickered and filled with an image that made several crew members step back in shock. The Devourer commander was a nightmare fusion of organic and mechanical parts, with multiple eyes that glowed with the same green light as their weapons. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus of different tones speaking in perfect unison. "Attention. Organic vessels," the creature said in perfectly clear English. "You are interfering with our feeding process. Withdraw immediately or be consumed." Cross stepped forward, her diplomatic training overriding her natural fear. "I am Ambassador Cross, of the United Earth Federation. We are here to defend the innocent species you have been attacking. We demand that you cease your aggression immediately." The Devourer's multiple eyes focused on her with what might have been amusement. "You demand? You are food." "Food does not make demands. You will be consumed like all the others." Hamilton had heard enough. "Ambassador, they are not here to negotiate." "Tom, battle stations, all ships, prepare for combat." The Devourer commander's expression changed, showing something that might have been confusion. "You choose to fight?" The Corvani ran. The Yalthari surrendered, but Novak begged for mercy. "Why do you not flee?" "Because," Hamilton said, his voice hard as steel, "we are humans. We do not run from bullies." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Humans?" "Yes, we have heard of your species. The galactic community speaks of you in whispers. They call you Deathworlders and claim you are dangerous. We have come to see if this is true." Cross felt her blood run cold. "You came here because of our reputation?" "We consume all organic life," the Devourer replied, "but we are curious about a species that other organics fear." "You will be an interesting meal." The transmission cut off, and immediately the alien ships began to accelerate toward the human fleet. Their weapons started charging, filling space with a green glow that made the darkness seem even more threatening. "All ships evasive maneuvers," Hamilton ordered. "Do not let them lock onto you. Use the asteroid field to break up their formations." The human ships scattered like startled birds, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the massive energy beams that the Devourers fired at them. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful, but they were designed to fight enemies that moved in predictable patterns. "Tom, target their lead ship," Hamilton commanded. "All weapons full power." The Defiance's missiles and energy cannons opened fire, joined by the other human ships in a coordinated attack. The weapons struck the Devourer ship's hull, creating explosions that lit up the darkness. But when the light faded, the alien vessel was still there, apparently undamaged. "Our weapons are not penetrating their armor," Bradley reported. "Their hull is some kind of organic metal hybrid. It is absorbing most of our attack energy." Hamilton watched as the Devourer ships began to turn, their massive bulk making them slow to respond to the human ships darting around them. "Then we do not attack their armor. We attack their weak points." Sarah analyzed their ship structure. "Find me something we can hurt." The battle continued as human ships danced around the lumbering alien vessels, firing constantly but doing little damage. The Devourer's return fire was devastating when it hit, but the human pilots were too skilled and too fast to be caught easily. "Captain," Kim called out, "I am detecting massive energy buildup in their forward sections. I think they are preparing some kind of super weapon." Hamilton realized immediately what was happening. The Devourers were not taking the human fleet seriously. They were preparing to end the battle with a single overwhelming attack, just as they had done with every other species they had encountered. "All ships, emergency scatter," he ordered. "Get as far away from each other as possible. Do not give them a concentrated target." The human fleet spread out across thousands of kilometers just as the Devourer ships unleashed their attack. Beams of energy powerful enough to crack planets lance through space, but most of them struck empty void where the human ships had been moments before. "Now," Hamilton shouted, "while they are recharging. All ships, attack pattern Delta, hit them with everything we have." The human fleet regrouped instantly, their ships moving in perfect coordination despite being scattered across the battlefield. They struck at the Devourer ships from multiple directions simultaneously, concentrating their fire on the same target. This time the result was different. The combined firepower of the human fleet punched through the alien armor, causing internal explosions that sent chunks of metal and flesh spinning into space. The Devourer ship began to list, its weapon systems failing. "We hurt them," Bradley reported with satisfaction. "Their armor is strong, but concentrated fire can penetrate it." The victory was short-lived. The damaged Devourer ship exploded in a burst of green light, but the other alien vessels immediately began to adapt their formation. They spread out to make coordinated attacks more difficult, and their weapons began firing in unpredictable patterns. "They are learning," Hamilton realized. "They are adapting to our tactics." The battle continued for hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable, but the Devourer vessels were vastly more powerful and heavily armored. For every alien ship the humans destroyed, they lost 2 of their own as the fight wore on. Hamilton began to understand something important about their enemy. The Devourers were not just mindless consumers. They were intelligent, adaptive, and completely ruthless. They studied their opponents and adjusted their tactics accordingly. "Captain," Cross said quietly, "we are losing. Our ships cannot take much more of this." Hamilton looked at the tactical display, which showed the human fleet slowly being whittled down by the superior alien firepower. But he also noticed something else. The Devourer ships were no longer moving in perfect formation. They were reacting to human tactics, which meant they were being forced to fight defensively. "Tom, I want you to run a full-spectrum analysis on their command ship," Hamilton ordered. "That big one in the center, find me its weakness." Bradley worked frantically at his console. "Sir, their command ship has a different energy signature than the others. It seems to be coordinating the entire fleet through some kind of neural link." Hamilton smiled grimly. "Then that is our target. If we can disrupt their command structure, we can break their coordination." The plan was desperate and dangerous. The human fleet would have to fight through the entire Devourer formation to reach the command ship, and they would probably lose most of their vessels in the process. But it was their only chance. "All ships," Hamilton broadcast, "we are going to make a run at their command vessel. This is likely to be a one-way trip for some of us. Anyone who wants to withdraw can do so now with no shame. The response came back immediately from every ship in the fleet. Negative defiance, we are with you. The final assault began with the human ships forming up in a tight formation aimed directly at the heart of the Devourer fleet. They accelerated at maximum power, firing everything they had at the alien vessels blocking their path. The Devourers responded with concentrated fire that destroyed 3 human ships in the first few seconds. But the remaining vessels pressed on, their pilots flying with a skill and determination that the aliens had never encountered before. "We are through their outer line," Bradley reported. "Command ship is dead ahead." Hamilton could see the massive alien vessel growing larger on the screen, its weapons turning toward them with deadly intent. "All remaining ships, everything you have?" Now, the concentrated fire of the human fleet struck the command ship just as it was preparing to fire its main weapons. The explosion was so bright that it overwhelmed the visual sensors, and when the light faded, the command ship was gone, immediately. The other Devourer ships began to move erratically, their perfect coordination broken. Some continued to fire. Others began to retreat, and a few seemed to be attacking their own allies. "We did it," Cross said in amazement. "We actually did it." But Hamilton was looking at the long-range sensors, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. "No," he said quietly. "We won a battle, but not the war." The sensors showed massive energy signatures approaching from deep space. The Devourer fleet they had just fought was not the main force, it was a scouting party. The real Devourer armada was arriving, and it was 100 times larger than anything they had just faced. "All ships," Hamilton broadcast with a heavy heart, "withdraw to Earth. We need to warn them that the real battle is just beginning." Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The emergency alarms had been sounding for 3 days straight as Earth's remaining defense fleet prepared for what everyone knew would be their final battle. Colonel Maria Santos stood in the briefing room of the Orbital Command Station, looking at tactical displays that showed the approaching Devourer armada in all its terrifying glory. "The main fleet consists of over 10,000 ships," reported Engineer Dave Chun, his voice hoarse from hours of continuous briefings. "Each one is larger than our biggest vessels, and they are supported by millions of smaller attack craft. Our conventional weapons cannot stop them." Santos nodded grimly. She had been chosen to lead the boarding parties that would attempt to sabotage the Devourer ships from within. It was a suicide mission, but it was the only strategy that might give humanity a chance. "What about the new weapons?" asked Dr. Ruth Klein, the physicist who had been working around the clock to develop alternative approaches to fighting the aliens. Chun activated another display, showing the modifications they had made to Earth's industrial equipment. "We have converted mining lasers into ship-killer weapons, turned cargo haulers into kamikaze drones, and created electromagnetic pulse devices from power plant generators. It is creative, but it may not be enough." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what they were facing. The Devourer armada was not just a military force, it was a consuming wave of destruction that had devoured entire civilizations. Against such odds, traditional tactics seemed meaningless. "Then we do not fight traditionally," Santos said firmly. "We use every advantage we have. We know this solar system better than they do. We know how to fight in zero gravity, how to survive in hostile environments, and how to make weapons out of anything we can find." The plan that emerged from the desperate brainstorming session was unlike anything in military history. Instead of trying to match the Devourers in conventional space combat, humanity would turn the entire solar system into a weapon. Asteroids would be redirected to create obstacles and projectiles. Space stations would be converted into massive bombs. Even the planets themselves would be used as tactical assets. Captain Jake Wilson had been analyzing the Devourer technology captured from the previous battle. "Their ships are living organisms fused with mechanical components," he reported. "They have a distributed nervous system that allows them to adapt and regenerate damage. But this also means they are vulnerable to biological and electrical attacks." Klein's team had been working on weapons specifically designed to exploit these weaknesses. We have developed viral programs that can infect their computer systems and toxins that can poison their organic components. The problem is delivering them. We need to get close enough to inject these weapons directly into their ships. That was where Santos and her boarding teams came in. Using modified mining equipment and construction suits, they would attempt to cut their way into the Devourer vessels and plant the new weapons where they would do the most damage. It sounds insane, admitted Commander Alex Rivera, who would be leading the ground forces in the final assault. But insane is what we do best. The first wave of Devourer ships arrived at the edge of the solar system exactly when the long-range sensors had predicted. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons already charging as they prepared to sweep aside any resistance. What they found instead was chaos. The human fleet was not arranged in neat battle lines waiting to be destroyed. Instead, they had scattered throughout the solar system, using planets and asteroids as cover while they launched hit-and-run attacks on the alien formation. All units, execute Operation Deathworld. Broadcast Fleet Admiral Kate Morrison from her command ship deep within the asteroid belt. Show them what happens when you threaten a species that evolved to survive the impossible. The battle began with a coordinated assault on the Devourer vanguard. Human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, striking at the alien vessels with weapons that had never been used in space combat before. Mining lasers designed to cut through solid rock tore into alien hulls. Cargo ships, loaded with explosives, rammed into Devourer vessels at incredible speeds, but the most effective attacks came from the boarding parties. Santos led her team in a desperate assault on one of the smaller Devourer ships, using cutting torches to burn through its hull while it was distracted by the larger battle. "We are inside," she reported over the radio as her team fought their way through corridors filled with a mixture of metal and living tissue. "The interior is like nothing we have ever seen. It is part machine, part organism, and it is trying to fight us." The ship's immune system had activated, sending antibodies and repair organisms to stop the intruders. But Santos and her team had been trained for exactly this kind of environment. They fought their way to the ship's central nervous system and planted Klein's viral weapons directly into the alien's brain. The result was immediate and devastating. The Devourer ship began to convulse, its weapons firing randomly as its nervous system was overloaded by the human-designed virus. Within minutes, it had destroyed 2 of its own allies and was drifting helplessly through space. "It worked," Santos reported with fierce satisfaction. "The virus is spreading through their neural networks. They're losing control of their own ships, but the victory was costly." Santos's team had suffered heavy casualties, and the Devourer fleet was adapting to the new threat. The alien ships began to isolate their infected vessels, cutting off the neural links that allowed the virus to spread. "They are learning again," Morrison observed from her command post. "We need to change tactics before they develop immunity to our weapons." The next phase of the battle saw human forces using increasingly desperate measures. Chun's converted mining equipment was deployed in coordinated attacks that targeted the Devourer's power systems. Cargo ships filled with industrial chemicals were crashed into alien vessels, creating toxic clouds that poisoned their organic components. Rivera's ground forces, meanwhile, had been deployed to defend the space stations and orbital platforms that the Devourers were trying to capture. "They are not just trying to destroy us," he reported during a brief lull in the fighting. "They are trying to consume us." Their boarding parties are harvesting human tissue and technology. The realization that the Devourers were studying human biology and tactics even as they fought them added a new dimension of horror to the battle. These aliens were not just conquerors, they were collectors, adding the knowledge and capabilities of their victims to their own arsenal. "Then we make sure they do not learn anything useful," Morrison decided. "All stations implement Protocol Scorched Earth. If we cannot hold a position, we destroy it completely." The order sent shockwaves through the human fleet. Protocol Scorched Earth meant abandoning any attempt to preserve human facilities or technology. Instead, everything would be destroyed rather than allow it to fall into alien hands. The results were spectacular and terrifying. Human space stations exploded in massive fireballs that took nearby devourer ships with them. Orbital platforms were turned into guided missiles that crashed into alien vessels. Even civilian ships were converted into weapons, their crews evacuated. Just moments before they were sent on kamikaze runs into the enemy formation, but the devourers kept coming. For every ship they lost, 10 more appeared to take its place. Their weapons were adapting to human tactics. Their armor was becoming resistant to human weapons, and their numbers seemed infinite. "Admiral," reported Captain Wilson from his position. "Near Mars, long-range sensors are detecting another wave of devourer ships approaching. This one is even larger than the first." Morrison felt her heart sink. They had thrown everything they had at the aliens, used every dirty trick and desperate gambit they could think of, and it was still not enough. The devourers were simply too numerous and too powerful. "All ships, fall back to Earth," she ordered. "We make our final stand there." As the human fleet retreated toward their homeworld, the Devourer Armada continued its relentless advance. But something had changed in the alien formation. Their ships were no longer moving in perfect synchronization. The boarding attacks, viral weapons, and suicide runs had disrupted their coordination and forced them to fight defensively. Klein analyzed the data from the battle and made a startling discovery. "Admiral, the Devourers are not just adapting to our tactics. They are being forced to expend enormous resources to counter our attacks. Their hive mind is being strained by the need to process all the chaos we are creating." Morrison realized what Klein was suggesting. "You mean we are not just fighting them, we are overwhelming their ability to think clearly?" "Exactly," Klein confirmed. "Their hive mind is designed to coordinate simple conquest against predictable enemies. We are forcing them to deal with thousands of different threats simultaneously, and it is causing system overload." The knowledge gave Morrison an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. What if we could overload their hive mind completely? Force it to shut down under the weight of too much information? Rivera understood immediately. We would need to create so much chaos that their collective consciousness could not process it all. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier would need to be doing something different and unpredictable. The plan that emerged was humanity's most desperate gambit yet. Instead of trying to fight the Devourers conventionally, they would create a battle so chaotic and unpredictable that the alien hive mind would collapse under the strain of trying to coordinate a response. "All ships, all stations, all personnel," Morrison broadcast to the entire human fleet. "Forget everything you know about military tactics. I want you to be creative, unpredictable, and completely insane. Make the Devourers think about so many different threats that they cannot think about any of them clearly." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Human ships began attacking in patterns that made no tactical sense. Weapons were used in ways they had never been designed for. Soldiers created improvised weapons from spare parts and debris. Even civilian volunteers joined the battle, using commercial vehicles and construction equipment as weapons. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and visible. Their perfect formations began to break down as their hive mind struggled to process the incredible variety of threats it was facing. Ships began to fire on their own allies. Coordination broke down. For the first time in their 1,000-year history of conquest, the Devourers were confused, but the human fleet was being decimated. Every ship that survived the next few hours would be a miracle. The final battle for Earth was about to begin, and humanity would either prove that Deathworlders could overcome impossible odds, or die trying. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the approaching alien armada and the scattered remnants of the human fleet. "All ships prepare for the final assault. Today we find out if being called Deathworlders is enough to save the galaxy." Asterisk, 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 the blue marble of Earth had never looked so beautiful as. Fleet Admiral Kate Morrison watched it grow larger on her command screen. Behind her, the massive Devourer armada stretched across the solar system like a plague of metal and flesh, consuming everything in its path. Ahead lay humanity's homeworld, and with it, the last hope for every living thing in the galaxy. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, she broadcast to the scattered remnants of the human fleet. We have reached the end of the line. Behind us is an enemy that has devoured 1,000 worlds. Ahead is the planet that made us what we are. Today, we find out if Deathworlders can save the galaxy. Captain Jake Wilson adjusted his grip on the controls of his experimental ship, the UES Prometheus. The vessel had been designed specifically for this moment, a suicide weapon that could penetrate the Devourer megaship's defenses and destroy it from within. His hands were steady despite knowing he would not survive the mission. "Jake, you do not have to do this," Morrison's voice crackled over the radio. "We can find another way." Wilson smiled grimly as he looked at the massive alien ship that dominated the center of the enemy formation. It was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and protected by shields that had never been breached. "Admiral, we both know there is no other way. Besides, I always wanted to see what was inside one of those things." Commander Alex Rivera coordinated the final desperate assault from the command center buried deep beneath the surface of Earth. Around him, displays showed the approaching alien fleet and the pathetic handful of human ships that stood against them, but Rivera was not looking at the odds, he was looking at the faces of his people. "Listen to me," he said to the assembled commanders. "Every species in the galaxy is counting on us. The Corvani, the Yalthari, the Novak, all of them are gone because they could not stop the Devourers. We are the last ones left, and we are going to show the universe what it means to be human." The final battle began as the Devourer armada entered Earth's orbital space. Their weapons began charging, preparing to strip the planet of all life just as they had done to countless worlds before. But this time, they faced an enemy that had turned desperation into an art form. Every human ship, station, and weapon platform opened fire simultaneously. The darkness of space filled with the light of explosions as humanity threw everything they had at the alien invaders. Mining lasers, converted cargo haulers, improvised weapons made from spare parts. All of it was aimed at the overwhelming alien force. The Devourers responded with concentrated fire that destroyed dozens of human vessels in the first few minutes. But for every ship they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The humans were not just fighting with their military, they were fighting with their entire civilization. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Sarah Kim, "we are receiving transmissions from across the planet. Civilian ships are launching to join the battle. Construction workers, miners, cargo pilots, everyone is volunteering to fight." Morrison felt tears in her eyes as she watched the tactical display fill with icons representing civilian vessels rushing to join the hopeless battle. Teachers in school shuttles, doctors in medical transports, even teenagers in racing ships. All of them were flying toward certain death to defend their world. "Then we make sure their sacrifice means something," she said fiercely. "All ships implement Operation Last Stand. We turn Earth's entire orbital infrastructure into a weapon." The plan was as desperate as it was brilliant. Every satellite, space station, and orbital platform would be converted into a guided missile aimed at the Devourer fleet. The planet's entire technological infrastructure would be sacrificed in a single overwhelming attack. Captain Wilson began his final approach to the megaship, his experimental vessel protected by the chaos of the larger battle. The alien vessels. Weapons were focused on the swarms of human ships attacking from all directions, giving him the chance he needed to reach his target. "This is Wilson," he transmitted as his ship approached the massive alien hull. "Beginning final approach. If this works, the megaship's destruction should disrupt their entire hive mind. If it does not work, it has been an honor serving with you all." The Prometheus struck the megaship's hull at incredible speed, its experimental weapons boring through layers of organic armor and mechanical defenses. Wilson fought to maintain control as alien defense systems tried to stop him, but his ship had been designed for exactly this purpose. "I am inside," he reported, his voice distorted by the alien environment. The interior is like a living cathedral. There are millions of devourers connected to some kind of central brain. I can see. The command center. Rivera watched Wilson's progress on the displays while coordinating the ground defense of Earth. The devourers had begun landing troops on the planet's surface, and human forces were fighting desperately to stop them from establishing a foothold. They are not like anything we have faced before, reported Colonel Santos from the front lines. They adapt to our weapons in real time. But they have one weakness: they cannot handle unexpected situations. Every time we do something completely random, they freeze up for a few seconds. The discovery led to a new tactic that only humans could have conceived. Instead of fighting in organized units, the ground forces began operating as individuals, each soldier creating their own unique approach to combat. The result was chaos, but it was chaos that the devourer hive mind could not process. In space, Wilson's ship had reached the heart of the megaship. The central chamber was filled with a massive, brain-like structure that pulsed with the same green energy as the devourer weapons. Millions of alien drones were connected to it by organic cables, creating a network that coordinated the entire fleet. Target acquired, Wilson transmitted. Initiating final sequence. The Prometheus began to glow with unstable energy as its experimental reactor overloaded. Wilson had just seconds to complete his mission before the ship tore itself apart. He aimed at the central brain and fired everything he had. The explosion that followed was visible from Earth's surface. The megaship convulsed as its central nervous system was destroyed, and immediately the effects spread through the Devourer fleet. Ships began to drift aimlessly, their weapons falling silent, their coordination completely disrupted. It worked, Morrison breathed in amazement. Wilson did it. The hive mind is collapsing, but the victory came at a terrible cost. The human fleet had been reduced to a handful of ships, and the planet's orbital infrastructure was completely destroyed. Thousands of brave souls had given their lives to create this moment. Rivera seized the opportunity immediately. All ground forces, advance. The devourers are confused and disorganized. Hit them with everything we have. The counterattack was swift and merciless. Human forces poured out of their defensive positions, using weapons improvised from farming, equipment, construction tools, and even kitchen implements. The devourers, cut off from their hive mind, were unable to coordinate a response. Dr. Klein's viral weapons finally had their chance to spread through the alien fleet. Without the central coordination to contain them, the computer viruses jumped from ship to ship, turning the devourer's own technology against them. Alien vessels began to fire on each other, their infected systems unable to distinguish friend from foe. "Admiral," reported Captain Park from one of the few surviving human ships, "the devourer fleet is breaking up. They are retreating from the system." Morrison allowed herself a moment of hope before reality set in. "How many ships are we tracking?" "Approximately 3,000 vessels are fleeing the system," Park replied. "But Admiral, long-range sensors are showing more devourer fleets approaching from other sectors." This was just the first wave. The news hit the human survivors like a physical blow. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The galaxy contained millions of devourer ships, and humanity had exhausted almost all of their resources. In this single engagement, Rivera understood the situation immediately. Then we take the fight to them. We cannot defend against every devourer fleet in the galaxy, but we can hunt them down one by one. The plan that emerged from the ashes of the battle was ambitious beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. Using captured devourer technology and the viral weapons that had proven so effective, they would create a fleet capable of striking at the aliens throughout the galaxy. "We are going to do what no other species has ever done," Morrison announced to the assembled survivors. "We are going to hunt the devourers to extinction. Every ship, every world, every trace of their existence will be eliminated." The alien refugees who had fled to Earth's solar system watched in amazement as the humans began rebuilding their fleet using a combination of their own technology and captured devourer equipment. What had taken other species centuries to develop, humans accomplished in months through sheer determination and creative thinking. "It is impossible," said one of the Corvani survivors. "No species has ever recovered from such losses so quickly." Rivera smiled grimly. "You still do not understand what makes us different. We do not just survive impossible situations, we thrive in them. The harder things get, the more dangerous we become." Over the following months, human strike forces began appearing throughout the galaxy, hunting down isolated Devourer fleets and destroying them with the same tactics that had saved Earth. The viral weapons spread through the alien hive mind, turning their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The galaxy watched in wonder as the species they had called Deathworlders systematically dismantled an enemy that had terrorized civilizations for millennia. What had seemed like humanity's darkest hour had become their greatest triumph. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the new flagship, watching as another Devourer fleet was destroyed by human forces. The ship was a hybrid of human engineering and alien technology, faster and more powerful than anything previously imagined. "Admiral," reported her communications officer, "we are receiving surrender signals from the last Devourer stronghold. They are requesting terms." Morrison considered the request for a moment, then shook her head. "No terms, no surrender. They chose to be predators, and predators do not get to choose when the hunt ends." The final battle took place in the depths of space, far from any inhabited system. The remaining Devourer forces had gathered for one last desperate stand, but they faced an enemy that had been forged in the fires of their own aggression. When the battle ended, the galaxy fell silent. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Devourers were gone. Every ship, every world, every trace of their existence had been eliminated by the species they had come to consume. The surviving civilizations began to rebuild, but they did so with a new understanding of what they owed to the Deathworlders who had saved them all. Earth became the center of a new galactic alliance, one built on the principle that some things were worth fighting for regardless of the cost. Morrison looked out at the stars and smiled. Humanity had proven that being called Deathworlders was not just a title, it was a promise. When the galaxy needed someone to stand against the darkness, they could count on the species that had learned to thrive in the face of impossible odds.